I'm Miranda with REI, and this video is going to cover how to construct a campfire. This will include the best practices for having a campfire, as well as where and how to assemble your fire, and then some tips for fully extinguishing that when you're all done. So we can't really talk about campfires without first talking about restrictions and regulations. Campfires are often thought to be just an inherent part of the camping experience, but increasingly they pose a risk to the environment and the ecosystem. So the first step is to check the rules and regulations for the region, as well as a specific campsite that you are headed to. These restrictions or regulations will tell you things like whether or not you're allowed to have a campfire, how you should get your wood, how you should put out the campfire, and just generally give you a really good understanding of the safety practices for the campsite that you are headed to. Keep in mind also that you don't have to have a campfire to have a good time camping, so if you're unsure about regulations, maybe just forgo the fire entirely. So now that you know that you are allowed to have a campfire, there are a couple of rules that are just best practices whenever you are setting up a campfire. And the first one is how you get your wood. So you should definitely purchase your wood from within a local area. So by local, I mean within 50 miles of your campground. And the reason for this is that we don't want to accidentally transport in invasive species. So you'll just want to buy at a store locally or sometimes directly at the campground where you are going. The other thing with gathering wood is that you don't want to gather it. So leave the dead wood that is at your campsite alone and instead bring in everything that you plan on burning. A dead branch on the ground might look like it's not doing anything to you, but it's actually a really important part of the ecosystem, so it's best to just let it lie. Follow Leave No Trace principles whenever you have any questions around this, and again, there will be a link on Leave No Trace in the description below. So we just covered fire restrictions, and now we're going to talk about how to construct a campfire. But first I want to acknowledge that I will not be lighting any of these fire structures in front of me. You should always use a fire pit when you are out camping. If you're at a campground, it's likely that they will provide you with a fire pit, so please use that. And in addition to that, make sure you clear the area of any flammable items, make sure that there's no low-hanging branches above you that might catch on fire. All of this just to, mitigate the risk of starting a wildfire. Now that we've covered that, let's talk about the different resources that you'll use to ignite your fire. Really, those are tinder, kindling, and your fuel logs. So first there's tinder. Tinder are these small, highly flammable items that will ignite quickly and burn very hot, but not for very long. And these can be some things that you purchase, such as fire starter, stuff that you make or bring from home. These are cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly, or you can use lint from your dryer. And then you can also cut off small shavings of wood from your fuel logs that you purchased locally. Another option with your tinder is to gather small twigs and sticks, but keep in mind that the most Leave No Trace friendly option is going to be to use tinder that you either bought or brought with you. After your tinder ignites, it should light your kindling on fire. Your kindling are those second level of logs in size, small things like these, or even some slightly larger logs like this guy here. And these are the small pieces of wood that will help to make the fire slightly larger and then burn the fuel logs. So the fuel logs are the large logs that make up the majority of the structure of your fire. So let's cover the three main fire structures that I have in front of me, starting with the cone shape. So the cone structure is probably the one that you are most familiar with. It's super easy to set up, and I think this is what a lot of us think of when we think of a campfire. The way that you'll do this is you will set up the kindling on the inside or on the bottom of your fire, and then you'll use the fuel logs to create this cone that all lean together in the center. And to light this, you will ignite your tinder, and then you will put it in on the bottom of the fire to catch the kindling on fire, and that will help to burn the logs. The plus side of using a cone is that it's really easy to ignite. It's a very easy structure to create, and it will ignite very quickly. The downside is that this does require a significant amount of maintenance. By that I mean that once it's burning, it will all kind of start to collapse and you need to add logs to it. So if you are looking for a fire that requires less maintenance, you might want to go with the pyramid structure. So this pyramid structure is sometimes called the upside down fire, and that's because you basically construct it in the reverse of what you might expect from a fire by putting your larger logs on the bottom and then having your kindling and your tinder up towards the top. So you can see here that I have these large fuel logs and then some slightly smaller fuel logs, all going down in size until we get to where my kindling is. And to light this fire, what I will do is ignite the tinder and then put that on top, and that will burn down. The bonus of this, or the plus side of this, is that as that tinder and kindling start to break apart, those will fall down into the structure and then heat up and catch the larger logs on fire. So really what you get is something that burns for a very long time with very low maintenance. If you're looking for a fire that you can cook on or something that will provide coals very quickly, then the best bet is to do a log cabin. So this is the log cabin structure, and this one is kind of exactly what it sounds like. You're laying out your logs in the shape of a cabin. So here I have my logs on the bottom, 3 across, and then smaller fuel logs going through the center, and then just stacking up however high you want to. There are a couple different ways that people will add their kindling and their tinder to this fire. You can either leave a hole in the center and then just drop all your kindling down in there, add your tinder, or you can kind of slide your kindling into the center like I've done here, and then add your tinder that way. The plus side of the log cabin is that it's pretty foolproof and it'll provide coals really quickly. And since coals are the best method for cooking over a campfire, this can be great for that. I'm not going to go too much into campfire cooking in this video, but we do have an entire other video on how to cook at camp, and that will include some tips for cooking over your campfire. So now I am going to set up a log cabin structure in my fire pit, and we will get it going. So here lie the remains of my campfire. You can see that all I have left here are these coals. Now it might look like this campfire is totally put out, but it actually is not. These coals are still very warm. Yeah, they're actually very warm to the touch. And in order for a fire to be considered completely out, the coals need to be cool to the touch. While this might not look like much, it's still very easy for a forest fire to start, for something to ignite when you have coals like this. So this is still considered an active fire. To fully put this fire out, what I'm going to do is scoot these coals around the fire pit, kind of disperse them. And then from there, what I will do is pour some water into the fire pit. I just want to get enough water in here that the coals are now, again, cool to the touch, but I don't want to flood the fire pit. If you flood the fire pit, it's going to be really hard for the next person to come in here and make a fire. So whether that's you the following night cooking or the people at the campsite after you, don't flood the fire pit. We still want it to be a useful spot to have a fire. All right, so now all the coals in my fire are cool to the touch. I have spread them out and ensured that this is not going to light up again and turn into a forest fire. Remember that it's really important to put your fire out completely so that you don't accidentally start a fire in the wilderness. But as always, it's even more important to make sure that you are following the fire restrictions for the area where you are camping. Now you know how to safely construct and extinguish a campfire. Remember that this video is part of a larger series of videos in the REI Co-op class, Intro to Camping. You can find those other videos linked below. Our next video is on camp cooking, including how to cook over a campfire. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more content. Happy and safe fire making to you all.